The chandeliers cast dancing shadows across crisp white tablecloths at Le Ciel Bleu. My feet ached in second-hand heels, thin straps cutting into my ankles. I balanced trays of champagne through the Friday dinner rush. 6 months at New York's most exclusive French bistro had taught me to become invisible. I drifted between tables, refilling glasses without making eye contact. At 22, my French literature degree gathered dust while I worked to pay Dad's medical bills. "Table 9 needs attention," Pierre hissed, his cologne leaving a sickly trail. "VIP, don't screw this up, Claire." I nodded, swallowing hard. A private reservation in our secluded corner booth had everyone on edge. The name Devereaux was on the booking, but staff whispered about the Bellamys. They supposedly controlled half of Manhattan's luxury real estate. Our owner rarely appeared, yet tonight he inspected every glass personally. Table 9 sat concealed behind orchids, occupied by 3 men. Only the center one drew my eye. Even seated, his presence commanded attention. His jawline was sharp, his dark hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. He wore a charcoal suit that moved like liquid mercury when he shifted. No wedding ring or watch adorned him, unusual in our clientele. The way he surveyed the room spoke of authority beyond mere wealth. The 2 men flanking him were clearly security with thick necks. Their eyes constantly scanned the room, hands positioned near their jackets. I'd never seen anyone so obviously armed in our establishment before. I approached with practiced deference, eyes appropriately lowered. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Le Ciel Bleu. May I bring you drinks?" The security men ignored me, but I felt the center man's attention shift like a physical weight. I looked up, meeting eyes so intensely blue they seemed artificial. I expected coldness, but found something worse. Curiosity. "Champagne," he said in perfect French, his deep voice carrying a slight accent. "Bring us your best vintage Dom Perignon," he continued in flawless French. Pierre looked panicked, ready to rush over and translate. Before he could intervene, I responded in the language of my childhood. "Certainly, sir. We have a 2008 that is exceptional," I replied in French. "I can also recommend the 2006 if you prefer something with more complexity." The silence that followed was absolute, as the security men tensed visibly. The center man froze completely, his blue eyes narrowing as he studied my face. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved or spoke. Then his mouth curved into something not quite a smile, and I knew I'd stepped onto dangerous ground. "Your French is impeccable," he said, switching to English, his accent now American. "Where did you learn to speak with such a perfect Marseille inflection?" The question seemed casual, but his eyes never left my face. "My grandmother was from Marseille," I answered, fighting the urge to step back. "I lived with her until she passed away 2 years ago." He leaned forward slightly, causing his security to mirror his movement. "What was her name?" he asked, tone conversational yet somehow demanding. "Your grandmother from Marseille?" The question was so specific, so unexpected. "Juliette. Juliette Moreau," I replied without thinking. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, then vanished just as quickly. "And your name?" he asked, gesturing to my name tag with long, elegant fingers. "Claire," I said, suddenly wishing I hadn't volunteered my grandmother's name. "Claire," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "Join me for a glass." It wasn't a request. His tone made that clear despite the polite phrasing. Pierre appeared beside me, face pale with either anger or fear. "Mr. Bellamy, I apologize for any inconvenience," Pierre stammered nervously. "Claire has other tables to attend to, but I'd be happy to serve you personally." The man, Bellamy, didn't even glance at Pierre, his eyes fixed on me. "I wasn't asking," Bellamy said quietly, still in English. The temperature around the table seemed to drop several degrees. "Bring the champagne and 3 glasses. We have things to discuss." Pierre's hand closed around my wrist, painfully tight, as he pulled me away. "What did you say to him?" he demanded once we reached the service station. "Nothing. He just asked about my French, about my grandmother." "Listen carefully," Pierre whispered, eyes darting toward table 9. "That's Theo Bellamy. When he comes here, you serve, you smile, and you leave." His fingers dug deeper into my wrist. "You do not engage. You do not speak French to him." I pulled my arm free, rubbing the red marks his grip had left. I didn't know who he was. I was just answering in the language he spoke to me. Pierre ran a trembling hand through his thinning hair. "Just bring the champagne." The 2008 Dom Perignon felt impossibly heavy on my silver tray. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached table 9 again. This time, Bellamy's security had moved to a nearby table, watching intently. I placed the bottle and 3 glasses on the table with hands I fought to keep steady. Bellamy gestured to the space across from him, his authority undeniable. "Sit, Claire Moreau," he said, using a surname I hadn't given him. The way he said my name, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth, sent a shiver down my spine. I perched on the edge of the seat as far from him as the booth allowed. His eyes never left my face as I presented the bottle and extracted the cork. "Your grandmother, Juliette Moreau," he began as I poured the champagne. "Did she ever speak of Marseille?" The question seemed innocent, but nothing about this man was casual or coincidental. I served his glass first, then mine, wondering how he knew my full name. "She told me about the harbor, the old neighborhoods, her childhood near the Vieux-Port." My voice sounded steadier than I felt as I placed the bottle in the ice bucket. "She left France in the 1980s and rarely spoke about why she came to America." Bellamy lifted his glass, studying the bubbles rising to the surface. "Did she ever mention the name Bellamy? Or perhaps the Devereaux family?" His gaze intensified, watching for any reaction I couldn't hide. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, hushed warnings never to speak certain names. "The Devereaux name was forbidden in our home," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. "She would change the channel if they appeared in news from France." A smile touched Bellamy's lips. Not warm, but satisfied, like I'd confirmed something important. "Your grandmother was engaged to my uncle before she fled France." He took a measured sip of champagne. "Did she ever tell you why she ran?" My head spun with implications, pieces of my grandmother's fragmented stories suddenly realigning. "She said she witnessed something she shouldn't have, that powerful men were looking for her." The champagne tasted bitter now, as I realized I was sitting across from one of those men. "What she witnessed was a transfer of power," Bellamy clarified, setting down his glass. "My family's businesses in Marseille weren't always as legitimate as they are now." He leaned forward slightly. "Your grandmother took something when she left. Documents. Evidence." My pulse quickened as I recalled the old metal box Grandma kept locked in her closet. After her death, I'd found it empty, except for a small key and an address in Manhattan. "I don't know anything about documents or evidence," I said truthfully, perhaps not consciously. Bellamy's fingers drummed once on the tablecloth. "But I believe she left you something. Perhaps instructions. A key. A code." His eyes narrowed. "Someone has been accessing old Devereaux accounts using information only Juliette possessed." The room seemed to tilt sideways as understanding dawned. This wasn't a chance meeting. Bellamy had been looking for me, had perhaps arranged my employment at Le Ciel Bleu. "You think I'm stealing from you?" I asked, fear giving way to indignation. "Not stealing," Bellamy corrected, his tone almost gentle. "Claiming what your grandmother left for you." He glanced toward the restaurant entrance where 2 men in dark suits had just arrived. His security team tensed visibly, one touching his earpiece while maintaining casual posture. "We have a problem," Bellamy said quietly, all pretense of casual conversation vanishing. His eyes flicked to the new arrivals, then back to me with new urgency. "The men by the door are Calabrian associates with an interest in your grandmother's legacy." I turned slightly, catching sight of the men being greeted by the maitre d'. Their expensive suits couldn't disguise the predatory way they scanned the room. When one of them looked our direction, Bellamy shifted, partially blocking their view of me. "How do they know about me?" I whispered, fighting the urge to sink lower in the booth. "I just found the key 3 weeks ago. I haven't even located what it opens." The admission slipped out before I could stop myself, confirming what Bellamy had suspected. A muscle twitched in his jaw as he signaled to his security with an almost imperceptible nod. "The Calabrians have been monitoring certain accounts, waiting for activity." He reached inside his jacket, removing what looked like a business card. "Your address on Sullivan Street isn't safe." I slid down my spine at the mention of my street name. These people, both Bellamy and these new threats, had been watching me. "How do you know where I live?" I demanded, though the question sounded naive even to my ears. "The same way I know you visit your father at Queen's Memorial every Sunday." Bellamy slid the card across the table. It contained only a phone number. "The same way I know your roommate Zoe is alone in your apartment right now." The implication hit me like a physical blow as I glanced again at the Calabrians. They were speaking to the host, one gesturing in our direction with apparent agitation. "Are they going to hurt Zoe to get to me?" The question emerged as barely more than a whisper. Bellamy's expression remained impassive, but something in his eyes shifted. "Not if you come with me now." Through the kitchen exit. He stood in one fluid motion, dropping several $100 bills on the table. I hesitated, trapped between threats I barely understood and a man who might be equally dangerous. "How do I know you're not worse than they are?" I challenged, not moving from my seat. Bellamy's mouth curved in what might have been respect. "You don't, but I haven't threatened your roommate." Pierre appeared at my elbow, his face ashen as he glanced between us. "Mr. Bellamy, is everything satisfactory with the champagne?" His voice quavered slightly as the Calabrians argued more forcefully with the maitre d'. 20 minutes later, I sat in the back of a black Bentley with tinted windows, my heart hammering against my ribs. Bellamy sat opposite me, speaking rapid French into a phone, his security team in a separate vehicle behind us. I'd left through the kitchen exit with nothing but my phone and the key I'd started carrying everywhere. The city lights blurred outside as we headed uptown, moving swiftly through late evening traffic. Each intersection increased the distance from my familiar life, waitressing, visiting Dad, struggling to make rent. I clutched my phone, tempted to text Zoe but hesitant after Bellamy's warnings about the Calabrians. "Your roommate is being moved to a hotel tonight," Bellamy said, ending his call. "My people will ensure she has everything she needs until this situation is resolved." He studied me with that unnerving intensity. "Do you understand what your grandmother gave you?" "A key," I answered, fingering the small brass object in my pocket. "An address on East 67th Street that turns out to be your company headquarters." The realization had struck me when we passed a building with the Bellamy Group logo, the same address Grandma left. Something like approval flickered across his face as he leaned forward. Juliette Moreau wasn't just engaged to my uncle, she was his confidant. He removed a tablet from a compartment in the car. She knew about certain offshore accounts set up in the 1980s. The tablet displayed financial records I couldn't fully comprehend, transactions dating back decades. Recent activity was highlighted in red, showing withdrawals made 3 weeks ago. "I didn't take any money," I said defensively. "I just used the account number to search for the address." "Accessing the account triggered security protocols," Bellamy explained, his tone matter-of-fact. "It alerted me, and unfortunately, others with monitoring software on our systems." He switched screens to show a map of Manhattan with a blinking dot. "That key opens a security box at this location." The Bentley slowed as it pulled into an underground garage beneath a sleek high-rise overlooking Central Park. The private entrance required both a key card and fingerprint identification from the driver. "Where are we?" I asked as the elevator doors closed behind us, sealing us in brushed steel silence. "My residence," Bellamy replied, removing his suit jacket to reveal a shoulder holster and gun. The casual way he checked the weapon made my stomach tighten with renewed fear. "The penthouse is secure. We'll discuss our next steps there." The elevator opened directly into a sprawling apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the illuminated city. Modern furnishings in muted grays and blues contrasted with unexpected touches, antique maps of Marseille, old maritime paintings. Despite its obvious luxury, the space felt functional rather than ostentatious. "Your grandmother helped my uncle hide evidence against the Calabrian families," Bellamy said, pouring amber liquid into crystal tumblers. "Documentation of their operations, offshore accounts, political bribes, insurance, essentially." He offered me a glass, which I reluctantly accepted. When she fled, she took the access codes with her. I stared at the drink without tasting it, trying to reconcile this information with the grandmother I'd known. The woman who taught me French poetry and made bouillabaisse on special occasions had been running from the Mafia. Why tell me this now? Why not approach me directly instead of orchestrating this meeting? Bellamy studied me over the rim of his glass, weighing his answer carefully. "The Calabrians have been watching you since your grandmother died, waiting for you to find the key." He gestured toward the windows. "I needed to see how you'd react under pressure before revealing myself." A knock at the door preceded the entrance of a woman in her 50s with a tablet. "Mr. Bellamy, we've confirmed movement at the Sullivan Street apartment," she reported. 4 men entered 10 minutes after Ms. Moreau left the restaurant. My stomach dropped at the thought of what might have happened if I'd gone home. "Your roommate?" Bellamy asked the woman without taking his eyes off me. "Already at the plaza under Johnson's supervision," she confirmed, before discreetly withdrawing. "The Devereaux-Calabrian feud dates back generations," Bellamy explained, setting down his untouched drink. "My uncle attempted to legitimize our businesses in the 80s, threatening their operations. He moved to a wall safe concealed behind an abstract painting. The evidence your grandmother protected is still valuable." The safe revealed a folder of aged documents and a USB drive that Bellamy placed on the glass coffee table. Tomorrow night is the antiquities auction at the Metropolitan Museum, he continued, seemingly changing subjects. The Calabrian patriarch will be there, along with representatives from all the old families. I stared at the folder, connecting fragments of memories, my grandmother's fearful glances at strangers on the street. You want to use me as bait? I realized aloud, the pieces falling into terrible place. You think they'll approach me at this auction if I attend with you? Instead of denying it, Bellamy nodded once, appreciating my directness. The security box your key opens contains digital copies of everything in this folder, plus account access codes. He tapped the USB drive. With both sets of evidence, we can permanently neutralize their operations in New York. The penthouse suddenly felt like a beautiful prison despite its luxury. And if I refuse to help you? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Then you're on your own against the Calabrians who believe you've already accessed the accounts. Bellamy's phone chimed with an incoming message that made his expression darken. They've left your apartment and are checking hotels in a systematic grid pattern. His eyes met mine, startlingly blue in the dimmed lighting. They're hunting you, Claire. I wrapped my arms around myself, overwhelmed by how completely my life had changed in a single evening. I need to call my father. Make sure he's safe, I insisted, pulling out my phone. They'll be monitoring his room at Queen's Memorial, Bellamy cautioned, but didn't stop me. To my surprise, he took the phone gently from my hand and entered a secure number. This can't be traced, he explained, returning it to me. Keep it brief. Don't mention names or locations. As I spoke reassuringly to my confused father, Bellamy watched with an expression I couldn't decipher. 24 hours later, I stood before a mirror in a guest bedroom of Bellamy's penthouse. The woman reflected back was barely recognizable, draped in midnight blue silk that whispered against my skin. Diamonds sparkled at my throat and ears, borrowed pieces worth more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Bellamy had arranged everything with military precision. My clothes, my security, my briefing on key players. I'd memorized names and faces of Calabrian associates who might approach me at the auction. The security box had been retrieved that morning by Bellamy's most trusted lieutenant, its contents now secure. You look perfect, Bellamy commented from the doorway, his reflection appearing behind mine in the mirror. In his tailored tuxedo, he projected power and confidence that made my breath catch despite my reservations. Remember, stay within sight of either me or Trent at all times, he instructed, adjusting his cufflinks. The Metropolitan Museum glowed like a beacon as our convoy of black vehicles pulled up to the entrance. Photographers snapped pictures of arriving guests, their flashes momentarily blinding as Bellamy guided me up the steps. His hand at the small of my back felt both protective and possessive, warning away potential threats. The grand hall had been transformed into an elegant auction space, with priceless antiquities displayed in glass cases. Bellamy navigated the crowd with practiced ease, introducing me as a family friend from France to curious associates. I played my role, speaking French when appropriate, watching for the Calabrians from the corner of my eye. That's Giovanni Russo by the Roman sculpture, Bellamy murmured, his lips close to my ear. Head of the Calabrian interest in New York, and the man most interested in what your grandmother took. He guided me smoothly in the opposite direction. Not yet. We need him to make the first move. As the auction began, we took seats near the center, positioned for clear sight lines in all directions. Russo sat 3 rows behind us, his attention seemingly on the auctioneer but occasionally fixing on the back of my head. The weight of his stare felt tangible, raising goosebumps along my bare shoulders despite the room's warmth. The bidding progressed through ancient artifacts and rare manuscripts while tension built invisibly around us. During a brief intermission, Bellamy excused himself to speak with a business associate, leaving me with Trent nearby. I moved toward the refreshment table, providing the opportunity Russo had been waiting for. Around us, the auction's elite guests continued their practice dance of wealth and influence. Art collectors pretended not to eavesdrop while hovering just within earshot of our exchange. I noticed Trent shifting his position, one hand discreetly touching his earpiece to alert Bellamy. Russo's eyes flicked to my grandmother's sapphire earrings, pieces I hadn't known were hers until Bellamy provided them. Juliet always favored blue stones, he remarked with unsettling familiarity. Did she ever tell you they were a gift from my brother before your grandfather stole her away? The revelation struck me like a physical blow. Another piece of my grandmother's hidden past. Had she been romantically involved with the Calabrians before meeting my grandfather? The thought of such tangled histories made me question everything I'd believed about my family. A waiter passed with a tray of canapes, providing momentary cover as I collected my thoughts. Across the room, I caught Bellamy's eye as he extracted himself from his conversation. The subtle tension in his shoulders told me he'd been monitoring our exchange from the beginning. Russo followed my gaze, his mouth curving into a knowing smile that never touched his eyes. "Your new protector moves quickly," he observed, voice dropping to ensure privacy. "I wonder if he's told you about the night your grandmother fled, and who helped her escape." "Ms. Moreau," a heavily accented voice addressed me as I reached for a champagne flute. Giovanni Russo appeared at my side, silver-haired and distinguished in an Italian suit. "Your grandmother and I were acquainted many years ago in Marseille." My pulse quickened, but I maintained the composure Bellamy had coached me to display. "I'm afraid she rarely spoke of her time there," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Though she did mention the Russo family once, something about illegal shipping practices in the port." His smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened at my deliberate provocation. "Your grandmother misunderstood certain business arrangements," he countered smoothly. "Perhaps we could discuss clearing up these misunderstandings somewhere more private?" Before I could respond, Bellamy materialized beside me, his hand reclaiming its place at the small of my back. "Giovanni, I wasn't aware you knew my fiancé," he said, the false claim sending shock through my system. Russo's expression flickered with surprise before settling into calculated reassessment. "Fiancé?" Russo repeated, his gaze dropping to my left hand where no ring yet resided. "A recent development," Bellamy replied with perfect composure, his arm tightening around my waist. "Claire has inherited some family interests that align with ours. A fortunate coincidence." Understanding dawned in Russo's eyes. Bellamy was declaring me under his protection through the oldest means possible. How convenient that the Moreau girl should fall into Bellamy hands just as certain accounts become active. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "One might suspect arrangement rather than coincidence." "One might suspect many things," I interjected, finding my voice despite my shock at Bellamy's claim, including why the Calabrians are so interested in decades-old evidence that should be irrelevant to legitimate businesses. The boldness of my statement surprised even me, but Bellamy's slight squeeze at my waist signaled approval. A woman in an emerald gown approached, her calculated timing suggesting Bellamy's orchestration. "Theodore, darling, the auction for the Marseille maritime maps is about to begin," she announced, expertly inserting herself between us. Russo stepped back, forced by social convention to acknowledge the interruption with a tight smile. The crowd shifted around us as guests returned to their seats, creating a momentary privacy shield. "That was Elise Bernard, our French legal counsel," Bellamy whispered against my ear. "She's activating our contingency plan. The documents are being transferred electronically to federal authorities as we speak." My fingers found the hidden pocket in my gown where I'd secured a small data drive. The weight of it seemed disproportionate to its size. Decades of crimes, money trails, and corruption. Grandma's insurance policy, passed from her hands to mine across a generation of silence. The auctioneer announced a rare collection of Mediterranean shipping manifests from the 1980s. Bellamy's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around mine as a slight smirk touched his lips. The manifests were forgeries he'd arranged, bait to distract the Calabrians from our real purpose tonight. Beyond Russo, I spotted 3 men in identical dark suits positioning themselves near exits. Their earpieces and vigilant postures mirrored Bellamy's security team, creating invisible battle lines. "The federal agents are in place," Bellamy confirmed in a whisper. "In 30 minutes this will be over." Russo's facade cracked momentarily, revealing the danger beneath his polished exterior. "You play a dangerous game for someone so new to our world, little waitress." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Ask your fiancé what happened to your grandmother's sister when she defied us." Ice slid down my spine. I hadn't known Grandma had a sister, the revelation adding another layer to this nightmare. "Is that a threat, Giovanni?" Bellamy asked, his tone conversational but eyes glacial. "Because threatening my future wife would violate several long-standing agreements between our families." The tension between the men became a palpable force, drawing attention from nearby guests. "A historical observation, nothing more." Russo retreated verbally, if not physically. "I simply encourage the young lady to understand all aspects of her inheritance." 3 days later, I stood in Bellamy's office at his company headquarters, watching him finalize the transfer. The evidence from my grandmother's security box, combined with what Bellamy already possessed, had proved devastating. Russo had been given a choice: relinquish Calabrian holdings in New York or face federal prosecution. "It's done," Bellamy announced, closing his laptop with finality. The Calabrians are withdrawing from the eastern seaboard. He looked up at me, that intensity still present but now familiar, almost comforting in its constancy. Your father's medical bills have been cleared, and the trust is established in your name. I fingered the sapphire pendant at my throat, a gift from Bellamy that doubled as a tracking device. And the charade of our engagement? I asked, still uncertain where pretense ended and truth began. The old families expect us to announce a date soon if the alliance is to be taken seriously. Something shifted in Bellamy's expression as he rounded the desk, stopping before me. Is it a charade, Claire? He asked, taking my hands in his. These past days have shown me what we could be together. He reached into his pocket, producing a ring set with sapphires that matched my pendant. This was my grandmother's. My head spun with the impossibility of the situation. Falling for a man I'd known a week, a man whose world terrified me. Yet something undeniable had formed between us through danger and revelation, a connection too powerful to dismiss. This is insane, I whispered, echoing my thoughts from that first night at the restaurant. Perhaps, he acknowledged, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. But insanity runs in both our families, it seems. His smile held warmth I'd never seen directed at anyone else. Your grandmother defied an empire for love. He held out the ring. Are you brave enough to build one for the same reason? In that moment, standing in the golden afternoon light filtering through Manhattan skyscrapers, I made my choice. I held out my hand, watching as the ring slipped onto my finger with perfect precision. Yes, I said simply, the word sealing my transformation from struggling waitress to power in my own right. Bellamy drew me against him, one hand cradling my face with surprising gentleness. When his lips met mine, the kiss wasn't the calculated move of a strategist, but something hungry and real. In choosing him, in choosing this life, I'd found strength I never knew existed within me. Thank you all for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support is what makes it possible for me to continue bringing these stories to you each week.